Hey there, welcome back to IST, and continuing our lessons on computers and computer parts, we're going to talk about motherboards today. We're going to talk about the size of the motherboard, the socket, and the chipset. Now, the size, it's also known as form factor. Now, form factor is very important because you want to, it kind of, outlines what you want to do with your computer. If you want this huge beefy computer, then you're going to go with the biggest one. If you want this mini, media center PC, then you're going to go with the smallest one. We're going to go in depth in just a second. So there are three main sizes of motherboard. There's ATX, MATX, and ITX. Now ATX. ATX is the main motherboard size that you'll find in everyday shopping. And that has, your basic CPU socket, your I/O, your RAM slots, usually up to 4. Actually, no, usually 4, and a bunch of expansion slots on the bottom. And your expansion slots are for your graphics card or for any add-on cards like a Wi-Fi card or more USB ports. Now, using an ATX motherboard is a lot better for dual graphics card uses using SLI or Crossfire, and that means you can use both of them at the same time. Instead of using one graphics card, you'll have two, double the power, double the speed, stuff like that. Now, MATX. MATX is a slightly less common, but still around the same type of amount of common as the ATX. Now, MATX is slightly shorter than the regular ATX motherboard, and has the same amount of RAM slots, and has the same CPU socket and I/O. Now, instead of it having a whole lot of expansion, it instead maybe has 3 or 4 less than the regular ATX. Now, ITX. ITX is the smallest motherboard that you can get. It's a small square. So what you can do is you put the CPU, you have I/O, and then you have usually 2 RAM slots instead of 4. And instead of having all this expansion, you'll have one expansion slot that you can extend into others if you have the space in a case for it. And ITX motherboard I recommend for like a media center, like if you're putting it like in your TV stand for like VR or other things that require a lot of space. But if not, just go with one of these for like a regular gaming setup, because especially if it's your first time making a PC, you don't have a lot of space to build in these cases. So I highly suggest ATX or MATX for your first build. Now we're going to talk about chipsets. Now the motherboard's chipset is very, very important as well, because that really means how up to date your PC is and how powerful that motherboard is. So chipset. Now there are a few types of chipsets. I've gone over some of them in the past, like B450 and B550. Now I've done some research and I have been, enlightened by YouTube and other sources. I know now that there are other chipsets that I forgot to mention. There are the X470 and X570 chipsets as well. And these are more modern, more recent than these. And these are the more, PC enthusiasts. Like, they'll be able to overclock a lot easier and be able to have a lot more compatibility with more RAM and more powerful CPU. And B450 and 550, like I said before, meant business, so it's for that normal consumer who doesn't know much about PCs, and that's like a safe choice. So now we're going to talk about sockets. And your socket is essentially what brand of CPU you'll have, either Intel or AMD. So sockets. Now the socket, there are two specific types of socket. one for AMD, and one for Intel. And the AMD socket is called AM4. Now, this AM4 socket has all of the components it needs to run all Ryzen CPUs. And if you're getting a Ryzen system or AMD system, you have nothing to worry about having, compatibility issues, because you're not going to get anything before Ryzen unless you're building older PCs, for enthusiast purposes or nostalgic purposes. Now, Intel is a little bit more complicated than that. I'm going to erase this so I can have more space. So Intel, the most recent chipset socket is the 1151 and the 1200 chipsets, and they are actually called LGA. They're called LGA 1151 or LGA 1200 or 1151. There's a bunch of different ways to say it. So compatibility, and the compatibility for each of these is Core. The Core series is their main series that they make. Their most high-powered series that even the cheapest and the weakest one can still get you places in the world of, especially like in business. They'll be like i3s or i5s. So there's nothing wrong with using those. So with the LGA 1151, it's Core i3, i5, and i7. Now, with each of these, there's the 7th generation of it that works. 7th gen. Now, 7th generation is you can tell what the 7th generation is by the number. And I remember when I said the number, was just a bunch of random numbers with a K at the end, I was actually wrong. The number actually correlates to the power and the generation it is. So if it's 7th generation, it starts with a 7. 9th generation starts with a 9, and 10th generation starts with a 10. And then it has the numbers corresponding, and then it could have a K at the end. And a K means overclock. Put a definition on the screen. Now, the 1200 LGA socket is also Core, but it supports the i3, i5, i7, and i9 10th gen. Now the 10th gen is the latest widely available generation, because I think some computers have 11th gen now, but it's still really expensive because it's new. So with that, my suggestion is for business, go with a 1151 i7, just so you can have fast processing with calculations or whatever you need to do, and then you have that extra processing to watch a video in the background or something. And for gaming, I suggest a 1200 i7 core. Now I would say Core i9, but that was really expensive actually. And would I want to overclock? If you're new to PC gaming, obviously not, but if you are a veteran and know what you're doing, then yes, overclock. So with that, if you like the video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and like and share the video. Thanks, I'll see you.